We are going across the pond all the way to Oregon today to go inside the mind of not only an athlete, but an highly acclaimed academic student as well. Because today we have a tennis player, a tennis coach, a podcast host, and I want to get this bit right. We've got a student of biochemistry and molecular biology. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Sarah Forster. How's it going, Sarah?
Hi, I am great. I'm so happy to be on the podcast today.
Thank you for coming on. Like, I've had a few, as we say, across the pond over here, and timing wise, it can get quite difficult because everyone has different lives, right? So trying to find the right times of what time of the day you're doing stuff, it isn't easy.
No, somehow we made it work though with the 7-8 hour time difference.
We did make it work. Good old Google. I found this one. It had a little slider, and it just slid across in the time. I was like, that is exactly what I need. So bookmark that for next time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm super excited to get into this one. We've actually met on a platform called Threads. For anybody that doesn't know, it's Instagram's version of Twitter, basically. But it has a fantastic podcast community over there. And you post a lot about your fitness, your tennis, your podcast. So for me, it was a no-brainer to get you on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I have honestly recently just gone on Threads, and it definitely is the app for me because like you said, there's a really cool podcast community on it. And then it seems like the fitness community and everything like that, which I'm sure we'll get into, is also just like really strong, and everybody's really nice and supportive. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. And that might shock a few people to hear that a social media app is nice, supportive, but it's true. It is. And it's got lots of little pockets. So many little pockets, like you said, you've got the gym group, you've got the podcast, you've got the entrepreneurs. There's loads of little pockets that you can find your people in.
Yeah, no, for sure. If you're not on Threads, get on Threads.
Yeah, there we go. You've heard it here first. Okay, what I love everybody to find out right from the start to get to know you. Who is Sarah Forster?
Oh my gosh. So I think honestly, you did a great job of kind of like, I feel like encapsulating all of the different parts of my life in that little blurb you gave in the beginning. But I mean, yeah, so I'm currently a senior in college. I play college tennis at a university called Linfield University in McMinnville, Oregon. I'm a senior biochemistry student. I coach tennis on the weekends and over the summer, which I love. And next year, I will be going to pharmacy school at the University of North Carolina, UNC. And so I'll be moving cross country soon.
It's mad. So for the UK listeners more so, I understand what college and university sport is like because I played ice hockey. So I obviously have a little bit of a link with the Canadian and the American side, and I understand what goes on there. But for us in college and university over here, sport's not really a thing. But over there, it's huge, right?
Right. Yeah, no, that's actually really interesting to hear. I didn't know that. Yeah, sports are huge in the US, that's for sure.
Yeah, like when we get all the Netflix shows of kind of like the basketball ones and stuff like that. And honestly, it baffles me every single time that I see the amount of people that go to watch high school games, college games. And then you got like college and university football. It's insane. It's just not normal here.
No. I mean, so next year when I go to UNC, I know it's going to be about a million times crazier. They're one of the best basketball programs in the country, and they have been for a really long time. And I know that like as a student, you have to get put into a lottery to even get admission to the game because so many people want to go to these games.
Yeah. Wow. How many would you get at a typical tennis game?
At our matches?
Yeah.
It depends it really depends on who we're playing. Tennis has never been a super popular sport. It's not like football. It's not like basketball. It has never, you have to kind of know tennis or else you kind of just go there and you're watching, you're like, what am I watching right now? Like it's like almost a different language. And so it depends. If we have a big match, like we have a crowd for sure. If it's like a smaller match though, like that nobody really knows about, I mean, tennis doesn't attract a lot of people. So it is but it attracts the certain people that know it and care about it and understand it. So
yeah, I absolutely, I do love tennis. I was saying to you before we came on, my brother and I used to use it as an off-season training, so that
hmm
we weren't constantly playing ice hockey, but we were still
oh yeah,
working on our hand-eye coordination, our speed, our agility, and
yeah,
having fun.
I
As long
love
as I
that.
was winning.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's such a good way to. I love cross training in general, so that's super cool.
Yeah, I think you did mention that, and that would be good to bring up. So I think that's going to be coming up very shortly, and where you got started,
Yeah,
which is great. But before we dig in, just for anybody that is unaware, because I'm not massively aware on what you are kind of studying, so if you just give
yeah.
everyone a little insight to what goes on in kind of biochemistry and molecular biology.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of knew I had an idea that I wanted to go into the health field when I was trying to think about like what I would be studying in college and university. And I originally was going to be a biology major, which is obviously just kind of the study of living things. And I ended up my freshman year, I took a really hard Calc 2 class that I thought I needed for my major, but I guess I was just wrong. And so I was like, dang, I just took this really hard class and did I just take it for nothing? And so I realized that with a biochemistry degree, I could put it towards the degree. Like you actually needed that class for a biochemistry degree. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just be a biochemistry major now. But it turned out to be the best thing because biochemistry is like mixing that like study of like living matter and things like that with chemistry, which has turned out that I definitely have an affinity for chemistry, definitely like chemistry. So it's just like combine in your body, like at a molecular level. And that has been super, super interesting for me to the point to where now I'm like I've gotten to take the higher level classes as I'm a senior now. And so the things that stood out to me the most kind of had to do with drug metabolism and everything like that. So, um, my parents are both pharmacists. I never would have ever thought I would be going into pharmacy, and here I am,
Yeah.
interested and going into pharmacy. So,
Yeah, yeah, and what I love about that is we've got the accidental intent. I talk about that quite a lot in the podcast.
yeah,
That kind of things do happen for a reason, even
right,
if you don't, even if you don't intend to do it. It's the work that you've done, and backed up there
right,
by, once again, the parents coming up. How much of an
yeah,
impact parents have, even if it's not directed, even if you had
right,
no intention to do it. Even just
yeah,
them being present within that field has obviously done something to drive you that
right,
way.
yeah, for
Did
sure.
they had a big impact in starting tennis, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, so when I started tennis, I was 3 years old, so obviously it wasn't my decision. I was just in a kinetics like class for 3-year-olds, I guess, and we were hitting balloons with foam paddles. And I guess at the end, the teacher went up to my parents and was like, "Hey, like your daughter has really good hand-eye coordination. She's really good at hitting these balloons with foam paddles. You should get her into tennis." And my parents were like, yeah, like that would be great. A great sport down the road, like in high school and middle school, like that would be great. And the teacher was like, no, like you need to get her into tennis now. Like they start really young. And my parents were kind of like, oh, okay. Like they weren't really athletes. They don't know anything about tennis. And I guess as a 3-year-old, they took me to the tennis club that I ended up growing up playing at, that I am a teaching pro at right now. They took me to that tennis club. And I guess the director was like, we don't usually start kids that young, but I'll take a look. And I did good enough, I guess. Got into tennis at 3 years old.
Yeah, that's mad because that is young. I was 5. I was 5 years old
Yeah.
when I started playing. I was skating at
Okay.
2. I went on the ice at
Wow.
2. So it does happen really young. And one thing that I definitely struggle with as a parent is kind of, my boys were growing up. I was like, but they haven't started skating yet. They haven't started
Right.
doing this yet. But
Yeah.
there's so many athletes that do start a lot later.
Oh,
It's
oh,
just,
for sure.
if you find it early, like you did, it's just
Mhm.
an added bonus, right?
Oh, for sure. And tennis really is one of those sports where it's such like a niche sport that you do see where the kids that do start earlier, it's like once they get to be about 6, 7, 8, they have this certain technique that like not a lot of you wouldn't have as an 8-year-old. And so I do think there are plenty of advantages to starting early, but at the same time, like one of the guys that I trained with all through middle school, all through high school, he's a bit older than me. He started in 8th grade and he ended up playing D1 tennis. So it's like
Hmm.
I think there's like it's just a different path for everyone for sure.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about tennis, because the bit that I find the most, where you say it's niche, it's different. there is
Right.
such a huge psychological element to tennis. Now,
Yep.
you are on the court by yourself. You
Yep.
know, I know there's kind of certain rules where you can talk to the coaches occasionally and things like that, but it's you and the other person. And I've
Yep.
played tennis not at a proper level, and I found it frustrating at times when things are not going right, and it's really
Right.
hard to dig yourself out of that hole.
Yeah.
How do you find that being in a sport where it is just you, really, for the time that you're playing, you've got no backup?
Yeah. It's definitely not easy. It's probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing about tennis. When I was growing up and I was playing junior tournaments growing up, like fully there is and there was no coaching allowed. Like your
Okay.
parents are up there watching and no one says anything the whole time. Like there was barely any clapping even. And so like maybe if someone hit a really good shot, they would clap. But you couldn't get any coaching from your parents. You couldn't talk to your parents. You couldn't talk to your coach. Even if your coach came and watched, you couldn't talk to them the whole match. There's none of that.
Wow.
So I just really growing up, like I had to learn at a really young age that it was just me out there, and it is super frustrating. It's not like when you play soccer and there's a million different things that can go wrong. There's a million different elements, there's a million different factors, and it's not just you out there. But in tennis, when you lose a match, it's all on you. Like that you are the person that lost that match. But on the flip side, when you win a match, it's really exciting because you realize like that was all you. So it's definitely a double-edged sword, but it definitely taught me at a really young age like how to have confidence in myself and like for myself when it's just me out there.
Mm. How did you manage that then? If you can think back, maybe there's a certain game that you could think to, where
Mhm.
things were going against you, or the frustration was
Right.
there, or you just really wanted to talk to somebody. How did
Right.
you how did you manage those times?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of plenty of matches that I've had like that for sure. I mean, I still have matches like that. The nice thing about college is like you do get to talk to a coach, which has been like so nice and also kind of weird at the same time. But I mean, when I was younger, it's like when you are with your coach, when you are at practice, that's where we work on those things because we know we're going to be in that situation. So I had little things I would do, like I would turn around, I would look at my strings, I would adjust my strings, I would try to focus on one thing, and that is probably the biggest thing I learned growing up, and how to cope with my emotions on the court and how to like stay calm under like pressure and when you're dealing with hard things is I taught myself to just, and my coach helps me too, is like focus on the things you can control. Focus on one thing that you have control over because it's not going to help you to think about 2 points ago, like what you could have done different. But what can you do in this one point that you have control over? And as long as you focus on those things you have control over, then everything else it will fall into place. You're going to do the best you can do and you can walk off the court saying you gave it your all. And that was kind of always what I strive for.
Yeah. So what would one thing be that you did focus on if you were kind of in match? What would you have used?
Yeah, I mean a lot of times it's like one thing that has to do with my technique. So sometimes it's like taking my racket back early. Like I notice when I get nervous, I kind of freeze and they hit the ball is coming to me, and I'm like, oh my God, like I need to hit the ball back. And I take my racket back late. So one thing I do is I'll focus on taking my racket back early, or I'll focus on my legs. I notice when I focus on my legs, then it kind of distracts me from the rest of the match and the rest of the point. It hasn't necessarily ever been that focusing on that one thing I can control is actually like that one thing really helps me become a better tennis player. But I think it's more about just concentrating my energy on something so that my mind isn't spiraling thinking about everything else going on.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting because you were even going right down to specifics on kind of like leg position. Now, thinking
Right.
about that now, if I was to really home in on that, you haven't
Mhm.
got the opportunity to think about anything else. You're so
Right.
concentrated on that one area. And I
Right.
guess that's the same in anything in life, right? If you concentrate,
Yeah.
like right now, we're talking on this podcast, we're
Right.
focused,
Yeah.
and then if something else then occurs, then we adapt. But yeah, that's really
Mhm.
interesting that you even went down to that right tiny little bit of detail. How have you utilized that? Because you said that's helped in life as well. How have you managed
Yeah.
to carry that over? Is there certain scenarios that you've noticed that has been beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually just gonna say, like, this is almost a study technique that I use. It's like when I'm focused on, like, let's say I have a really big biochemistry test coming up, I'll sit there and I will look at my biochemistry stuff. Like, I will put my phone on do not disturb. Won't respond to texts. I won't respond to emails. I will seriously just sit there and be like, my number one goal is biochemistry right now, and I will just sit there and do that until like I'll either have like a time that I'm going to get done, or usually it's just a number of things I need to get done, or I need to study, or I need to look at. And that is what I do in that moment. Like I am like not focused on anything else. And I feel like when you can get into that deep work mindset and you can really get dialed in on one thing, that's where you can actually make progress. It's when you're distracted by your phone or distracted by your friends or distracted by whatever is going on around you, like that can make it really hard to make any progress, even if you sit there for a long time. So I do find that if I can get really concentrated on one thing, that's where I can make progress and see success.
Yeah, because you're doing both of that right now. You're having to
Hmm.
do that on the court. We're not talking to
Yeah.
somebody who's studied and now playing, or vice versa. You're doing
Right.
all of this high intense stuff physically and
Yeah.
mentally all the time. How
Hmm.
one how do you balance that? And
Yeah.
two,
Yeah.
what how do you shift from from one to the other?
Yeah. I mean, college tennis has been just a whole different ball game for me because, we have practice. Like in high school, it's like I never did this. But if I had a test, I could just have not gone to practice. I could just, like, skip practice. I could skip morning workout, whatever. Like, it's my choice, honestly. And in college, it's like, I signed up to be a part of this team. I made this commitment. I don't have the option to just, like, skip. So, one thing for me is, like, that it's actually been really good for me because when we have practice at 4:30 PM, by about 4:10 PM, whatever I had going on in my life at the moment, whatever test I had to study for, whatever class I was working on, whatever homework I was working on, that all just gets put away because I don't have another choice. And I go out on the tennis court and I play 2 hours of tennis and my mind is cleared and I'm not thinking about school at that point. I'm thinking about tennis. And then after tennis, I go and I shower and maybe I get back into school again. But it's actually been great because it almost forces me to have those like mental breaks. Like I don't have an option. I go play tennis. And so that's where, yeah, I don't know. It's just I show up, I play tennis when I'm on the tennis court. That's what I'm focused on. And when I'm off the tennis court, I'm really dialed in on school. And when I have so little time, it actually makes it so much more of a necessity to be productive when I have the time to focus on school because I don't have the ability to just say, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow," or "Oh, I'll do it later today," because I have a certain amount of time set aside for that and it needs to get done in that amount of time.
Yeah, I think the key bit there, what you said was that it was the mental break, that
Yeah.
you've done your studying, and it's very easy, I guess, when you got exams and you are pushing to get degrees and stuff, to overwork yourself, to cram and and
Mhm.
and to do too much. Whereas the sport provides you a well needed break, and when you're playing, as you will know, especially in tennis, when you start thinking, that's when things go wrong. And what I
Yep.
liked a minute ago, you said about you and your coach, you practice scenarios to automate it,
Mhm.
because you do. Sport is a practiced and automated event. As soon as you
Right.
start thinking in an event, that's when things go wrong. So
Yeah.
having that break, I guess the balance almost then is, the balance sounds like it was a bit forced in terms of your schedule, but was also a
Mhm.
necessity to
Right.
have that. Otherwise, you might have just been working more.
Right. Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, it doesn't give me the ability to procrastinate, but it also does give me that much needed mental break that I need because I honestly think otherwise I could see myself just sitting and doing work for hours and hours at a time. And I don't think that's productive either. One thing my dad said, this was like, just a few months ago. It was like during finals last semester, and what I like had a really slow morning. I worked out, and I should be studying for finals. I like went on a walk, I got coffee, like I had a great morning because I didn't have class or anything, and I knew I had finals to study for. So I really didn't get started with my day until like 1 p.m., 12 p.m. or so, 12 p.m., 1 p.m. or so. And I was telling my dad, I was like, yeah, I just feel like, oh, like I should have really like been more productive with more efficient with my morning. I wasted a lot of time. And my dad was like, were you actually planning on studying for 15 hours today? Like, were you actually planning on studying for 12 hours today? Like, could
Yeah.
you actually like, were you even capable of that? Is that what your plan was? And I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, no, probably not." And he's like, "Okay, so, like, you're not gonna be studying for 12 hours anyways, so just study for the time you can, be really intentional about the time you can study, and the rest of it, like, go enjoy your life. Go do something else." I was like, "That's so true."
Yeah. 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 Have you ever read Limitless? There's a book called Limitless by Jim Quick.
No, I've heard of it.
Fascinating book.
Okay.
Fascinating. He's basically gone from somebody who had a brain injury that was told he was never going to learn anything, was never going to amount to anything,
Mhm.
to being the lead voice of learning. And he
Okay.
talks a lot about in there about exams and how cramming is has the adverse effect, and we can only focus in short blocks, I think, of like 25
Yeah.
minutes. And really interesting because it teaches you a lot about learning. I read it too late, obviously, from school and studying,
Yeah.
but it is fascinating to know because it is a bit of a personal development book as well. But yeah,
Right.
your dad is 100% right. There's only so much we can do and take in, and the stress
Right.
of overworking is going to do more damage than you having those breaks and kind of working at your own time.
Yeah, for sure. I literally wrote that book down. But that is one thing I think, even especially in my early years of college, when the workload wasn't quite as much, I did a really good job of. I was very intentional about. Okay, I never do homework after dinner. I would have dinner and then relax the rest of my night. And I knew the next morning I was getting up early. I was working out. I was doing homework during the day. I had school. But the second like dinner was done, that was my cue. Like, okay, like the work today is done unless there's something super urgent that needs to get done before tomorrow. I'm done for the day. And I think that having that balance actually definitely paid off in the long run.
One thing that definitely drew you to me in on Threads was
Mhm.
this work ethic you have. Like you're posting on there, you're studying, you've got the tennis, you've got the podcast, you're constantly, you're working out or you're running or you're hiking. Like it's clear to
Yeah.
see that the work ethic is insane. Where has
Mhm.
that come from?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty easy answer, but also it's nuanced. So, growing up, my coach probably my tennis coach had a very, very big impact on me and on the work ethic I have today and who I am today. So I had the same coach from about the age of like 5, 6 or so
Oh
until I
wow.
graduated from high school. And now I work with him as a teaching pro. Like I now we're like coworkers basically. And I just
Oh
saw him on the
nice.
court next to me yesterday. So we had a really strong bond that obviously grew. And he was very, very passionate. Like he was the coach that like I try to be now. And so he would come. So we would have practice every morning at 6 in the morning. And we're out there in the freezing cold tennis courts in this metal building with no heat at 6 in the morning every morning. And he would come every morning at 6 in the morning with a prepared, pretty much like a speech every morning. He would talk about like Kobe Bryant, he'd talk about Michael Jordan, he would talk about tennis players, he'd talk about Nadal, and he would just give us examples of like work ethic. Like he truly didn't care how we were performing out there, but he was very, very insistent on like you want to be the hardest work in the room. Like hard work does pay off. And like you want to be putting in the time, you want to be putting in the effort, you want to be putting in the energy. And I can't even recall how many different speeches and examples he gave. And like we would be doing conditioning, we'd be like running, I there's kind of like this hill, like 6 or 7 minute, really terrible 6 or 7 minute hill that we run up in the summers. And it wasn't really about the tennis as much. It was about like you want to be the hardest worker in the room and then the tennis will come. And there
Mhm.
are just so many lessons, and I just absorbed all of that as a kid and as a high schooler. And um yeah, I mean, I basically like that is where I learned about work ethic, and I'm really, really thankful and I appreciate all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a key skill. It's a key skill that's missing a lot in today's
Mhm.
world. Is that resilience? Like I've got
Yeah,
some crazy
yeah.
stories of how coaches used to toughen us up and make us more
Oh,
resilient,
yeah,
and it pays off. Do you
yeah.
find did you notice did that work for all the athletes? Did all the athletes resonate with your coach, or did you find some it just didn't sit well with?
That's a great question. So no, like my coach was very insistent on like overcoming adversity. Like he would always try to find examples of, people overcoming adversity. He would talk about how Serena Williams, he's like, do not complain about how dead the balls are. Do not complain about your strings. Do not complain about your rackets. Serena Williams grew up playing with dead balls on cracked courts and she became Serena Williams. And like I took that and I was like, oh my gosh, like yeah, like I'm just gonna come out here, control what I can control, and give it all I got. But there were some boys in the group, like not that this is always gonna be a boys thing, but in our group at the time, there were a couple of boys, and it did not sit well with them. Tennis is a sport where I don't want to use the word entitled, but there's money in the sport and it's not like basketball or like soccer or football where there's always like you're replaceable. You're very replaceable. Tennis is not a cheap sport and it's a lot of kids that are used to getting what they want.
Mhm.
And so if a kid like, if my coach is like, okay, like we're going to be, you're going to do 20 push-ups when you miss the ball in the net or whatever it is. If the kid doesn't want to do that or the kid like doesn't like that or the kid doesn't like being told what to do, a lot of times parents will just take them out of the program, go find another coach, and that
Yeah,
happened. And so
yeah,
what happened is it almost kind of, in a way, I think it was really hard for my coach to see that, but it did kind of weed out the kids that were there because they wanted to play tennis and have fun and show off and whatever and feel their ego. And then it weeded out like the hardest workers in the room. So what actually ended up happening was even though we did lose some in our program, it became an even more cohesive program because then it was like the energy was just so good all the time. And there wasn't complaining, there wasn't whining. Like my coach would always say, like rule number 67, never complain, never whine, never complain, never give excuses. And at some point the program became like those were the types of people in the program. And I think when you're surrounded by those types of people, like that's where that's where there's real potential is when you're in that environment and it's just that good energy in those types of people.
yeah. And that's why I asked, because in sport and in life, you're not going to
Mhm.
get on with every coach. You're not going to get
No,
on with every boss. You're not
no,
going to get on with everybody.
no.
And sometimes it is, again, the accidental intent that you fell into his program and it worked for you. And,
Right,
maybe the others that it didn't work for, maybe their attitude was wrong, or maybe they went to another program that found a coach that did massage their ego in a way. And
right.
there is
Yeah,
these opportunities. You don't have to stick. If you find one, the
yeah.
advice would be hold on tight and don't let go,
Hmm.
because when you find somebody that cares for you, especially as a coach, it can be quite rare.
Oh
um
yeah, for sure.
yeah, it might be different for you guys over there, because obviously sport is a lot bigger. you
Hmm.
you know you you speak about 6 a.m. training sessions.
Yeah.
We never had that. We had parents that complained if we had ice at 10:30 in the morning on a Sunday. um
Yeah.
we didn't have that. And I do feel, if we're looking at kind of America as a sporting nation,
Hmm.
it's known for hard work. It's known for resilience. It's known for for being tenacious. Whereas
Yeah.
you kind of look at the English or the British side, it doesn't have that same approach. And I think a lot of that is what's drilled into you at a younger age of going to
Yeah.
your early morning workouts before school. You won't find many kids over here doing that.
Yeah. No, you do bring up a really interesting point. And earlier you were talking about how it feels like in our society in general, like there is not as much like of that work ethic to be had. And like I'll be the first to say I think I got really, really lucky with the environment I was placed in. I don't think, we had 6 a.m. practices because the adults didn't want the juniors on their court in the
Yeah,
afternoon time, you know,
yeah.
but it ended up like being a positive because then I learned that I can do hard things.
Hmm.
But back to what you were saying earlier, like, I mean, I work as a pharmacy technician right now. Like, I am a teaching pro. I am in school. I see other kids my age. And you're right. Like, there's not a lot of work ethic to be had, which is like, it's hard to see because I think what I've learned is with school, with tennis, whatever, I'm like, okay, all I have to do is just consistently show up and consistently put in effort. If I consistently show up and I consistently put in effort, like, especially with school, like the results will come. And so it almost makes it like the bar is even lower now. Like a lot of people are like, oh, you're doing so many things. Like you're going to be going to pharmacy, you're going to be going to tennis, like you're a podcaster. And all I do really is just consistently show up and consistently put in effort. Like I'm not doing anything special, but the bar is really low. And so that's kind of like, it's, I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but
It's you said the C word over and over again. It's a consistency thing, and
yeah,
it is, and I work a lot of that with what I do with my behavior change coaching. Is I look to
yeah,
find somebody's purpose and passion for doing it,
right,
and then we can start building consistency. Because if you don't enjoy it, if you don't love
right.
what you do, it's very easy to not do it.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but then, like for you, waking up at 6 because you loved playing tennis
Mhm.
is different to somebody who's getting up at 6 because they're told to go and play tennis by their parents, or they're told that they're good but they don't actually love it. So
Right.
there is, sometimes you are looking for what the reason is. But when we talk in kind of a generic society something, and there are still people that are heavily successful and working hard, which is fantastic. But the
Yeah.
ones that aren't, they have to be willing to find what they love as well.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to get quite a lot through the podcast. Is I've spoken to some athletes that changed sports because they didn't like it, and
Mhm.
and that's okay. It's okay. If you're playing tennis and you don't like it, there might be another sport for you. It's not, it doesn't have to be too late, but it is ideal as a younger athlete to try some different stuff, try
Yeah.
different sports. You never know what you're going to love playing.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, and I'm, like, writing things down because there's so much you said there. I think the first thing really is the passion. Like, truly right now, I like everything I'm doing. I like tennis. I love tennis. I'm actually super interested in what I'm studying in school. I love coaching tennis. I'm really excited about podcasting and social media. And so I love everything I'm doing, and that makes a really big difference. I think in high school especially, and then even in college, it's really easy to, like, I see a lot of people around me, a lot of students around me especially, doing things for their college application. Like, I need to volunteer this many hours a week so that I can put it on my resume, so I can get into this college, so that I can get this job, and like on and on and on. And I just don't, like, fully, I don't do things for the most part. I don't do things I don't want to do, or I don't do things that I know won't have some benefit to me in the long run. Like, I'll do things in the moment that I don't want to do because I know that they have some long-term benefit. But for the most part, like, I'm just pursuing things that I'm passionate about. Um and like, one thing my coach always said is, like, it's not going to be fun all the time. And I think that, like, that goes for anything. That goes for your job, that goes for tennis, that goes for podcasting even. Like, you're not going to be it's not going to be butterflies and rainbows all the time,
Yeah.
but you just have to trust the process. And I think that's where my mind and my energy has been focused all these years, is like, it's not always going to be fun, but if you trust the process, you consistently put in that effort, it, like, you'll see results, and you'll see that, like, those glimmers of, oh yeah, like, this is why I do this. And I've seen that with tennis. I've seen that with school. I've seen that. And so, it's just a cycle. It's kind of like a feed forward cycle that just keeps going, honestly.
Yeah. It's that if I look back to when I was at school and I looked
Mhm.
at you and you're in love with all of this stuff, it would be easy for me to say, "Oh, well, you're lucky. You're lucky. Your parents did it.
I
You
am
must love it
lucky.
because of that." Is it, you know?
Yeah.
But when I look at it now, I wasn't terrible at school, but I had to work hard to get what I did, which wasn't even
Mhm.
then. It wasn't all A's. And
Mhm.
I did okay. I did okay at school, but I had
Yeah.
no idea. I had no passion. No passion. Well, apart from PE and sport, I had no passion.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really till after I retired from hockey, so early 30s, that I fell into the
Yeah.
love of human behavior, human psychology, habits, fascinated
Yeah.
by it. I was in
Yeah.
my early 30s. Where was
Yeah.
this, kind of when I was in school? So
Right.
it's never too kind of late to learn for anybody. There'll be somebody that's sitting here listening that's like you. They're like, yeah, I love this stuff, and this is what I want to integrate more. And there'll be people listening that
Right.
are like, oh yeah, but I have no passion. It's like, well, that's
Yeah.
okay. It doesn't mean you haven't found it yet. There is something out there for everybody that they love.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I I think that's where you have to just kind of work to your strengths. Like everybody naturally has different strengths. And I think, there's something to be said about doing things you're not good at and enjoying things you're not good at. But I also think it's important to notice, like, where are you the strongest and how can I pursue that more? Because you're naturally going to like things that you're naturally good at. And that's where I had kind of an interesting journey with tennis is like I didn't have the most natural talent with tennis. Like I have friends that went on to play D1 tennis and like I have one friend especially and she's like one of my best friends. She plays D1 tennis right now. She's always naturally been so good at tennis. I she just naturally was a great tennis player and I felt like I was always putting in so much work and honestly wasn't even close to her level and like it's okay. Like I am great friends with her. We played on the same high school team. Like that's great for her. But at the same time, it's hard because I'm like, dang, like I'm putting in all this effort. And, she just comes out here and like beats me 6-0, 6-0. But that's where I think I was able to notice with school, like school comes naturally easier for me. I definitely have to put in work. It's not that I haven't put in work. Like I do work hard at school and I think that's why I like do as well as I do. But I think it has also allowed me to see like, okay, when you have some sort of natural talent and you combine it with hard work, like that's where you can truly like see a lot of success.
Yeah. Well, it's the famous saying, isn't it? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen it. Remember,
Yeah.
I've had a full career, and when I was younger, there was players that were right up here. But
Mhm.
people are listening on audio. I'm holding my hand up quite high.
Yeah.
But over the years, the players that stuck at it, that went to the gym, that did all the extra bits,
Right.
slowly started to catch up. And
Yeah.
those players that were talented that didn't do the work, they didn't
Yeah.
make it. They
Yeah.
didn't make it. They didn't reach their potential.
Right.
And some of that can be driven in from coaches and parents telling them how good they are.
Yeah.
I actually had a really interesting conversation with my uncle one time, and he was quite talented when he was a kid, and everyone told him he was naturally gifted, and he
Right.
feels that's a big part of his issue now. Is that he finds it hard to get going because everyone told him he didn't have to work for anything. He was
Right.
just naturally talented.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem is that, if there is a parent here that has a talented kid, yes, you want to massage the ego and give them the
Mm.
compliments when compliments are due, but you've got to keep them honest as well. And you've got to keep them humble,
Right.
because hard work will catch up with you every
Yeah.
single time. It will.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorite studies that I know of is, they had a bunch of kids take these tests and they told half the kids, wow, you did so well. You're so smart. And then they told the other half of the kids, wow, you did so well. You worked really hard. And the group of kids that they told that worked really hard, like they actually ended up doing better on future tests because some of the kids thought that said they were really smart. They just thought, okay, I'm really smart. I don't have to work hard anymore. Um, and that's where I think my work ethic with tennis really, even though I wasn't the most like naturally gifted player, it paid off because I mean, we got to like high school tennis, like high school level age. I'm playing tournaments, junior tournament circuit in high school. And there were girls that had been playing tennis. I've seen them playing junior tournaments for years now, and they've always been better than me. And it's interesting that like I consistently put in the hard work and they just like got to a point where they faced adversity and they just didn't know how to deal with it and they quit. And so
Mm.
now it's like, okay, I'm over here. I get to play college tennis. I'm having fun with it. And tennis isn't even a part of their life anymore. So it is crazy to like look at it from all these different ways.
Yeah, that study's interesting because I don't know if it's the same
Yeah.
one, but there was one where there was a third one. There was
Okay.
a third extra, and it was offering a high five, no words,
Oh,
just a high five, and actually that worked
okay.
better than complimenting the hard work.
Wow. I
Yeah,
no, I haven't ever heard that one.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that was. But
Yeah.
it's a really interesting point because action should be rewarded more than the final reward. You should be
Yeah,
complimented for your work in training, your gym,
right,
the shots you were playing in the game. But yet
right.
celebrate this final. Oh, I've won the game. Now I can celebrate.
Mhm.
Whereas actually, you see the tennis players, and a lot of them love their fist pumps, and they're
Yeah.
celebrating those individual points. And that's no
Mhm.
different in life with exams and studying and
Oh, yeah.
nutrition and anything
Yeah.
like those little wins stacked up. You're going to get everything you want. It just
Yeah.
becomes a matter of when rather than if, and
Yes.
that should be promoted more. I believe like celebrating hard work and action.
Oh, for sure. And that I mean, that's where I did get really lucky. Like my coach, that's what he was focused on. He was focused on the work. I went 9 months straight as a junior. I was probably like 15 years old. I went 9 months straight and lost every single tennis match I played for 9
Wow.
months, which like at some point is like why didn't I quit at that point? But my coach was like, "It's fine. Like, trust the process. You're putting in the work. You just don't know when or how, but that hard work will pay off." And like, I'm so glad I stuck with it. But it's like, I think for a lot of people, for me, it's like it was hard to stick with tennis when I just kept losing over and over and over again. But I was putting in the work, and I trusted the process so hard, and yeah, you just don't know when, you don't know in what capacity, you don't know in what form, but I really believe that hard work pays off.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was going to say, why didn't you? Why didn't you quit?
Yeah.
But I,
That's yeah.
yeah, I guess that it'd been so deeply ingrained in you via your coach and through your own beliefs that, yeah, one day it will pay off. And again, that's the power of words as well. You had
Mhm.
no idea if it would, but you trusted
Yeah.
and you believed. You believed in the words, which is huge.
Yeah, and I that's one thing I really take now as I'm coaching tennis is I know what type of impact like the small things I say have on the kids that I'm coaching, and so I really need to be intentional with my words. But I also know what kind of impact the words I have can have on the kids that I coach, which is also really exciting because it's like I'm like molding these little kids into being just like really hardworking humans and athletes. But I do think that one reason I've thought about it so much, I'm like, why didn't I quit when I was like really going through that? And I think one thing that's always helped me is like tennis has never been my whole life. Like I love tennis. I played tennis with my friends. I competed, but tennis has never been my whole life. Like I've always had other things. Like I've had school, I've had my friends, I've had, like now I have like pharmacy and I have my job coaching and podcasting. And I do think there is something to be said about like being multidimensional and having more than just one thing because when that one thing isn't going well, it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to shift more of my attention right now to my friends, or maybe I'm just going to shift more of my attention to like the things that are going well. And like that thing continues to be a part of your life and you consistently work at it, but it's not your whole life. And so when that one thing isn't going well and you don't have all your eggs in one basket, you can choose to focus on other things. But if all I had in my life was tennis and that was my only focus and I was losing for 9 months straight, I probably would have quit because what else do I have? Like, why am I doing it then? So I do
Yeah.
think that I heard once that, you want to find as many different outlets for flow, like where you can get into flow state as possible.
Hmm.
And I really like to think about it like that. And so
Yeah.
I'm always like looking for like, okay, like what are the outlets that I have where I can like fall into that flow state?
Yeah. Yeah, so it was almost you had a really good life balance. It's something that I
Yeah.
work a lot with my clients. So obviously the life balance, I use the life triangle
Oh,
because
yeah.
I believe there's three key elements: health, wealth, and social.
Yeah.
So if you put your tennis as the health and that wasn't going well, your triangle was
Yeah.
easy to shift over to
Hmm.
going to see your friends or knuckling down with wealth, which would be at the time studying, so you were easy to flip that triangle, which is great.
Right.
I love what you said there, because if you have a missing side of the triangle, if you have
Yeah.
no relationship, no friends,
Yeah.
that collapses, your foundation collapses.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's really important there to I had a life away from ice hockey.
Yeah.
A lot of my ice hockey friends had ice hockey friends. That was who they hung out with. I was very
Hmm.
close with my school friends,
Yeah.
so I had a life away from hockey. And I think, I agree. I think it helps to have that balance and that separation, that you're not then just all your eggs are in one basket.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's really only something I've been thinking about more like within the last year or so, but I am super grateful for that. And I definitely want to make sure I'm intentional about keeping it that way, especially like next year's gonna be hard because I'm not for the first time I'm not gonna be a college athlete. And so I just want to make sure I continue to be intentional with my time of like, okay, I have school, but I also have the gym and I also have like podcasting or social media, and I also have my time with my friends. And so I want to make sure I'm able to continue to have all of those different elements because it truly is it makes the world of a difference.
Yeah. And you have now a life outside the game, which is
Right.
kind of what the podcast is about, is that you know, it is great to play sports. There's so much
Yeah.
goodness with it, but
Hmm.
there are other aspects. And one of those aspects you've mentioned quite a lot today is your passion for coaching.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself coaching the same way your coach coached you, or do you have your own style with maybe a little bit of sprinkling of what he taught you?
Yeah. A lot of it is really similar because there are so many things that I look back on and I didn't realize at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that made such a big impact on my life and I didn't even realize it at the time. So, like over the summer I have this group of 5 girls that I work with and that is like the highlight of my week every week. And I do spend a lot of time with them talking about work ethic and talking about hustling and talking about, when we're picking up the balls, we are jogging to pick up the balls. Like we're doing everything with a purpose. And it's just so cute to see like there was one day one of the girls and she's not the most talented in the group, but she like has a really good attitude and she's like guys, like we need to be hustling. And I really see how like your words have such a big impact. And but then again, like no coach is going to be perfect. I realize me like as a coach, like I'm not going to be perfect. Like I always want to keep learning, but everything I say and do isn't going to be perfect, and how it's not going to be how everyone wants to be coached. But then along with that, you have to learn how to coach different people differently, which has also been like
Mm,
an
yeah.
interesting learning experience for me. But yeah, of course there's things I do differently. There's things I learned from my college coaches that I never thought about when I was growing up playing, and they've done things differently. So it's kind of like I kind of just take a mix of all of my experiences and do what I can to be the best coach that I can be.
I think that's the best way. I think, if
Mhm.
you follow one route of how one person does something all the time, I
Mhm.
think it can be very, really restrictive. You said there a second ago, you had a realization recently that, there were certain areas that you didn't realize that had such an impact on
Yeah.
your life. Can you think
Mhm.
of anything? Is there something you can share with us?
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like we've talked about a lot of it, which is just all of those like little tiny, like you want to work on overcoming adversity and you want to work on being that person that actually craves adversity. Those are things that, I would just like was told growing up and I didn't think much of it at the time. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I want to crave adversity. And now here I am, like I I genuinely like to work hard. I like the feeling of working hard, like whether it's in the gym, whether it's on the tennis court, whether it's in school. Like I actually do. I like that. I want to be on the court for hours, just like training and things like that. And so I can't think of like nothing like comes to my mind right now, but it's just a mix of all of these little things you were told, and
Yeah.
you really don't realize how your environment and the people around you really shape you growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. All aspects you learn from the good and the bad as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And one thing I wanted to say too with like coaching tennis is, I've had like my struggles with performance anxiety on the tennis court for sure. But I understand tennis and I know tennis really well. And I feel like coaching tennis has just been one of those ways where, you don't know how that hard work is going to pay off. Like I didn't know how, me being a collegiate athlete would pay off. And now here I am, like making money doing this. And it's fun for me. And I get to talk to people and I get to work with people and I get to watch people improve all day. And, just like a couple weeks ago, I work with Babolat, which is a tennis brand now. It's like the brand of the racket that
Hmm.
Nadal uses and stuff.
Okay.
They make rackets. And I've been working with them recently, kind of combining like my social media thing and coaching tennis together. And I got the opportunity to go to Indian Wells, which is a professional tennis tournament in Palm Springs. and I got to work with Babolat in Indian Wells. And it's like, these are things I never, ever would have had the opportunity to do if I didn't stick with tennis and keep putting in the effort and, just like take chances on myself. So,
and that all that hard work
yeah.
and all that resilience starts to pay
Mhm.
off.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
there a specific trait that you would look now in your young athletes that you look for and you go, if they've got that, I know they've got something?
Yeah. I mean, it truly is that it's that resilience. And for me, honestly, it's the attitude. Like, I really think like attitude is everything. And you can look at things with like a positive outlook on life, and you can look at things with a negative outlook on life. And I think confirmation bias is so real. And like, you can find reasons to believe that what you think is true, and you can find reasons to believe that what you like don't think is true, whatever. Like, you see what is it? What you focus on, you see more of. And so
Hmm.
I think that those athletes I have that, they focus on how they're improving, and they focus on how they can get better, and they focus on, like wanting to get better, and they have that growth mindset, that like passion for the sport, and I can see it and I like know it when I talk to them. Those are the athletes I really, really like to work with. And then I have players where like you can tell that their mom just wants them to be there. And I like there's been players
Yeah.
I've had where I'm like, okay, like be honest with me. Do you really like tennis? Because it doesn't look like it. And if you do like tennis, like act like you like it. Like act like you want to be here. But if you don't like tennis and you don't want to be here, like don't be here. And so I think just that having that attitude and having that like I want to get better mentality and having that passion for tennis, that's what's going to take you the farthest in tennis, but like in the rest of your life.
Yeah, it is. It's the purpose and the passion.
Right.
And you have to have it. And
Right.
again, there is time and place for a parent to guide.
Yeah.
But it's kind of knowing when it's going too far, and
Right.
it's just not working, and allow them to go find something else, which is
Yeah.
which is massive.
Yeah.
um
Sure.
and obviously we've spoken a little bit, but you have your podcast as well, and what I loved, from kind of sharing what it's about and everything on Threads, is you've got a
Yeah.
similar approach to why I'm here. And
Yeah.
everything that you've spoken about today it's kind of the concept. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you're trying to achieve from the podcast? What is the goal of it? What are you doing there?
Yeah. So my friend Lexi and I have a podcast called Own Your Life. And we have kind of recently started it. It's been in the works for a while. We've had a lot of like trial and error moments. And we decided to like fully get really intentional and really serious about it a few months ago, I guess probably in like November of last year. And we got really serious about it. And I met Lexi, we're actually working in the pharmacy. So that's just another way that,
Okay.
random things you do like can
Yeah.
pay off, because now she's truly one of my best friends. And so we're both really passionate about health. We're both really passionate about fitness. And we also both have the same mindset, like all of this mindset stuff we've been talking about, like that is what we love to talk about. And that is what we want to share with other people, because truly, I don't think this information is like out there. Like I got really lucky having the coaches I did growing up and having like the parents I did growing up. I saw what work ethic looked like. And so I just want to be able to share my mindset and like that approach and have those conversations with other like-minded people that want to be a part of that community. So, yeah, we got really serious about it. We come out with new episodes every Monday, and it does, the more I'm talking to you, the more it seems aligned with what's going on in this podcast. But basically, it's just, we talk about health, we talk about fitness, we talk about lifestyle. Like it's not like a podcast where we're like, oh, like you just need to work hard and overcome adversity. And it's not that intense. And so we realize that people have lives, and we just want to talk about real life things and real life, like health and wellness things as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely been a really good creative outlet for me, just because I've never really had a like solid creative outlet in the past. I'm not an artist. I'm not like a painter. I don't draw. I don't sing or do anything like that. And so this has been a really, really good way for me to get creative with something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah. Well, that's where it started for me. The first
Yeah.
podcast I ever listened to was an accidental one. I
Oh,
asked on
really?
Twitter, I said, has somebody got a business podcast for me to listen to? I'd retired from hockey, should
Yeah.
really focus more on my business now. And it was a personal development business one, and it completely changed my life. And
Yeah.
I feel like personal development and growth mindset
Oh, yeah.
has a place in a podcast. It's something that you
Mhm.
can go for a walk and let it sink in a bit more subconsciously as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love anybody that has a story to tell and is
Mhm.
willing to share it, because somebody needs to listen to you too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciate that. And that actually made me think too. Like, I think one of the first podcasts I listened to is also accidental. And it's just another thing. I listened to this podcast during COVID called Chasing Excellence. And it was this CrossFit coach that, a professional CrossFit coach that hosted this podcast. And honestly, a lot of the mindset stuff I talk about today also like I got from that podcast. And so I think that's also showed me like what kind of impact the podcast you listen to can have, and just in addition to like the coaches you have and the people around you. So that's truly just what I want to give to other people.
Yeah, yeah. It's a perfect platform to do it.
Yeah.
What is next? What's next for Sarah Forster?
At this point in my life, I truly have no idea. Like, it's so certain, but it's also so uncertain. Like, I'm gonna go to pharmacy school. Like, that's pretty certain. I actually did get a job. I will be a teaching pro in Chapel Hill, where I'm gonna be moving in North Carolina at Chapel Hill Tennis Club. So I'm really excited to start. I'll start that like literally right after I graduate. So I'm gonna be moving right after I graduate to Chapel Hill, and I'll get started with that, which I think will be really good for me in the sense of I'm moving across the country and I don't know anybody in that area. So I think that will allow me to kind of form community, make friends, do something that I like to do. But also in the sense of it's a really big tennis club. And I think it's a really good opportunity for me to learn and become a better coach. They've got, for instance, like the club I teach at now has 6 indoor and 2 outdoor courts, and Chapel Hill Tennis Club has over 30 courts. So it'll be a big jump for me. Like, there's a lot of really qualified people there, and sometimes I'm like, am I actually qualified to be doing this? So I think
Good
I
old
will have.
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, no, I mean, pretty much with everything I've done, I've had imposter syndrome. Like, it's just how I go about my life, I guess. But yeah, I think that'll be a great opportunity for me. I'm really excited about that. And then, yeah, I'll start pharmacy school in August. So I'm really excited to just kind of venture out and take a leap and see what happens.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a crazy year. If it hasn't already been, it's going to
Yeah.
get crazier.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've been close to my family and everything. Like, I'm still like an hour away from home. So it'll definitely be, I think it'll be a really good experience for me to just kind of be on my own and figure out things on my own and meet some new people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It sounds like everything's aligning. All that work, all that resilience, it's all aligning, and you have the tools to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to learn more about you, or kind of keep up to date with your story and what's going on, where can they
Yeah.
find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. It's just at Sarah Forrester, and there's 2 R's at the end. Just 1 R in the middle, 2 R's at the end of that Forrester. Threads is the same. I have been really active on there recently, so that's kind of the behind the scenes of my life. And then, yeah, Own Your Life podcast is on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you should be able to find it by just searching. But we also have on Instagram, we're at Own Your Life Pod, so you can also find us there. But yeah,
There
no,
we
thank you
go.
so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed chatting with you. I feel like we could have talked for hours, honestly.
Yeah, but I find that with most of the time with the athletes, because there is so much to share.
Yeah,
It is, for many people it's been their whole life, so
yeah,
there's so much to learn from it, and that's what I just want to keep doing, is just keeping getting out the reps of the podcast, and all I need is one little piece of information that somebody
yeah,
goes, yeah, actually that's I got that. That's all the
yeah,
podcast needs. So I think we got
right.
plenty of those for everybody to take away today. So thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming on. It was lovely to chat.
yeah,
And as I like to remind everybody, there is no cost for listening to the podcast, but there is a fee. And that if you've taken anything away from today, please share with somebody who might need to hear this, to your Instagram account, send it to a message, anything that you can do to help somebody that needed to hear this information today. We'd be forever grateful. So thank you so much. Sarah, we will catch up soon. And remember, there's always another game. Take care.
Always another game. Thank you.